As I already showed you 3 days ago, things get interesting as soon as we reclaim the $118,000, because then I think we could see new all-time highs relatively quickly. And that's exactly what has happened now. We broke through the $118,000 mark and, just as I said, quickly marched to new all-time highs. The last few days have been extremely exciting overall. There was so much volume coming in here, an extreme amount of money flowed in. It's really, really exciting right now. Trading here at the moment is a lot of fun again, and the move I predicted from here to there was about 6 or 7%. With 100 times leverage, that would be 600 or 700%. 100 times leverage is a bit excessive, but I still often use 30 to 50 times leverage with Bitcoin. And we caught this entire move. It was definitely fun, and as you saw, I showed it to you live in the video. And by doing that, I always make myself vulnerable when I show you things like this in the video, because in the next video, someone could say, hey, you lied, or something like that. But that hasn't happened so far. I predicted it perfectly, so please leave a like for this level of precision. What exactly happened here? We were basically in a downtrend here, and in a downtrend, it's usually like this. We make lows, higher lows, lower lows, higher lows, and so on. But then we moved up here, had our higher low here, and then went down again, but couldn't break the low. That was already a good sign for me. We noticed, okay, there was a lot coming in here. Because we formed higher lows here, which was a good sign, then it was important for me that we break through this level, because once we broke through it, it meant we were no longer in a downtrend. From this point on, we were back in an uptrend, and accordingly, a lot changes. I knew that as soon as we were in an uptrend, things could move very quickly, and we could immediately target and go after new all-time highs. I showed it to you in the video 3, 4, 5 days ago. Feel free to watch it again, and that's the kind of precision we love. From here, things could theoretically move pretty quickly now, because just this move that happened so fast over the last few days, a 16, 17% move in a very short time, shows us that it was purely a market maker game. The market makers are currently pushing this thing up. And it could definitely continue, because it really looks like we've just broken out of this exhausting phase. I mean, we had such an exhausting phase, here, and here now. Long periods of sideways movement, but each time that was followed by a really nice upward trend, and right now it looks like this could maybe be the next upward trend again. We'll need to look at some other data to see if that's really the case again this time. Of course, what needs to be said here is that right now we again have too many long positions compared to short positions. Just imagine if we go up to $110,000 again, about $15 billion would simply be liquidated. Accordingly, a small pullback would definitely be conceivable. But on the other hand, what also needs to be said is that this upward trend in Bitcoin was nicely bought up in the spot market. So spot positions were really nicely increased here. That's a very good sign, because it means this upward trend didn't come just from leveraged positions, but from real spot purchases. That's truly a good sign. And what you can also clearly see here is that the funding rate has increased, yes, but not dramatically so far. And that also suggests that we definitely still have upward potential, because if the funding rate were to rise too sharply, to zero, we would have an even more severe imbalance. We do already have an imbalance now, but with this level of imbalance, you just have to say that we definitely still have potential to keep rising, because sometimes when the imbalance is that high or even higher, then it's clear we need a crash or a bigger correction. At the moment, we haven't risen dramatically yet. That means we definitely still have plenty of room to move up. But the nice thing is, as I said, that no matter whether it's on Binance, Coinbase, Bitfinex, or OKX, we can see that this upward trend was driven by actual spot positions. And that's what's important about this upward trend. If this had just been a pure futures movement, you could say, okay, it'll be sold off again pretty quickly, but that wasn't the case, and that's why this is a sustainable, solid upward trend. Now, of course, it depends on the coming weeks and how Bitcoin continues to develop. We can also imagine that these zones here will be seen as support, and then the price will continue to rise. But we'll take a closer look at that over the next few days. What I was pretty sure about is that as soon as we break through this level, things will move fairly quickly toward new all-time highs. Otherwise, we continue to follow the moving average with Bitcoin, and we can see that we're simply not yet in an excessively overheated zone. The cycle keeps dragging on, but if you compare it to the past, we can clearly see that in previous cycles, we had a longer phase of euphoria. We don't really have that at the moment. We're in this yellow-orange zone, which definitely already hints at some overheating, but this should definitely continue like this for the next few weeks. That would be the best case scenario, because today we're also talking a bit about what needs to happen for us to finally see some movement in the altcoins again. Because what's really important here, especially for the altcoins, is that Bitcoin needs to surge just once, but really surge quickly and sustainably. Because if you take a look at the Bitcoin chart up here and the altcoin chart, it's clear that we had a really strong upward trend. During that time, nothing at all happened with the altcoins in comparison. Nothing happened, but things started to get really interesting when things moved relatively quickly. When things started moving quickly here, with a slight delay, the altcoins began to move as well. When we then experienced the next big upward trend here, a lot of capital also flowed into the altcoins. And you can clearly see that for altcoins, it's really important that Bitcoin overheats quickly in the short term. The faster that happens, the more euphoria is generated, and that benefits the altcoins. And that impacts the altcoins even more positively, because right now, we can already see that Ethereum is outperforming Bitcoin. That's also really great, and it can definitely stay that way for the next few weeks. Currently, the trend is already pointing a bit in that direction. That's definitely a good sign, you just have to say. That definitely shows strength among the altcoins. But especially here, it's important that Ethereum breaks through its previous all-time high. If Ethereum manages to sustainably surpass its last all-time high, which we're really not far from, that could trigger a small phase of euphoria for the alts, or it could spark the next altcoin trend, or maybe even usher in a bit of an altcoin season. You just have to say it like that because if we look at the past, we had the all-time high here in 2017. When we broke through it in the last cycle in 2020, that's really when things started to take off for the altcoins. The all-time high had to be broken, and once it was, we rose quickly and strongly, and the altcoins performed really well. That's extremely important, and it's something you should keep in mind right now. And we're really not far from the previous all-time high at the moment. If that gets broken quickly now, things are going to get really exciting for the altcoins. Just as you have to say, from a global economic perspective, we had a few problems here where liquidity was simply held back, and as a result, that liquidity couldn't flow into the alts. But things are slowly improving because we can see it up here in the Russell 2000 and down here in the altcoin chart. The Russell 2000 reflects 2000 small US stocks, and these small US stocks only perform well when monetary policy is loose and when we have a stable economy. And we can see that pretty clearly here. When the Russell 2000 performed well, the altcoins also did really well. That means you can already make a pretty good comparison with the altcoins here. Here too, with the Russell, we had a nice upward trend. Accordingly, the altcoins were also able to perform better here. In the past, you could really compare this quite well. And with the Russell 2000, we've currently broken above the last all-time high. That means things are very, very exciting right now. What will happen in the next few days? Will we stick to it? Will we keep rising? Because if we break through the last all-time high, that could trigger another nice phase of euphoria for the altcoins or for the Russell 2000 as well. This is also a very, very important chart with regard to the altcoins because every time the Russell 2000 has broken out, the altcoins have also been able to perform nicely a few weeks or months later. So, in comparison, you can see this quite clearly here. The Russell 2000 is kind of an early indicator for our altcoin sector. Apart from that, you can also say that with Bitcoin, we see that the reserves on the exchanges are getting scarcer and scarcer. We are now at an all-time low for the past 6 years. So the Bitcoin reserves on the exchanges are becoming increasingly scarce, which is a very good sign. This also indicates that we are in a long-term upward trend because you can clearly see that Bitcoin is being bought, sent to a hardware wallet, and is gone from the exchanges. You only do that if you want to hold Bitcoin for the long term. So this development as well, really great. Just like we saw last week, a whopping $3.2 billion flowed into the Bitcoin ETFs. This movement is also sustainable and really great, and what I like best is simply this chart. Up here, we see the M2 money supply in relation to Bitcoin. Bitcoin has actually followed the M2 money supply quite closely and strongly several times. We can currently see that Bitcoin is lagging a bit here. But the M2 money supply keeps hitting new all-time highs. A really great sign. Down here, we simply see gold's performance compared to Bitcoin's performance. And here too, we see that gold always picked up first and Bitcoin followed after, but most of the time, Bitcoin outperformed gold by a multiple, and that's also a really positive sign. I think October has been going pretty well so far. As far as I'm concerned, it can definitely keep going like this. I think the next few weeks are going to be really exciting again.